नमस्कार टुडेज युथ एशियाद्वारा निर्माण गरिएको कार्यक्रम युथ टिभी शो मेकिङ नेपाल प्राउड ग्लोबलीको नयाँ एपिसोडमा यहाँलाई हार्दिक स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छु। कार्यक्रमको लागि यहाँले पठाउनु भएको फिडब्याक्सहरू हामीले पाइरहेका छौं र भविष्यमा पनि फिडब्याक्सहरू पठाउनुहुन्छ होला भन्ने अपेक्षा पनि गर्दछौं। आजको कार्यक्रममा हामीसँग अमेरिकी राजदूतावासको कल्चरल अफेयर्स सेक्सनका कल्चरल अफेयर्स अफिसर अमान्डा ज्याकब्सन हुनुहुन्छ। आजको कार्यक्रममा यहाँहरूले अमान्डा ज्याकब्सनले दिनुभएको कल्चरल डाइभर्सिटी अराउन्ड द वर्ल्ड विषयको एक्सक्लुसिभ इन्टरेक्सन प्रोग्राम हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ। सो लेट्स टेक अ लुक।
आज हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ अमान्डा ज्याकब्सन, कल्चरल अफेयर्स अफिसर, संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिकी राजदूतावास, पब्लिक अफेयर्स सेक्शन, काठमाडौँ, Nepal. Amanda Jacobson is the Cultural Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy to Nepal. She arrived in Kathmandu for a 2-year tour in September 2009. Previously, she was a consular officer in Togo, West Africa, where she also managed community development projects such as wells, schools, and health facilities. Before joining the State Department in 2006, America, where she coordinated Model United Nations conferences and taught courses on human rights, the media, world cultures and religions, and the history of the United Nations. She speaks Spanish, French, and has 3 children. We welcome you to our program today.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Amanda Jacobson, and I've been in Nepal for approximately the last 4 months. Previously, I was in Togo, and I was a consular officer. Now that I'm in Nepal, I am a cultural affairs officer. My passion really is youth, so that's why I'm especially pleased to be here today and to promote mutual understanding with students of Nepal. Before I joined the State Department, I was a teacher for 4 years in Honduras, and I taught in Mexico for 3 years, which is our partner to the south, right? So I taught, and I love working with youth. As a cultural affairs officer, I have different items that I'm in charge of. For example, we do youth exchanges. We bring youth from Nepal, from different communities, and we take them to the United States for youth development skills. Right now we've worked with Today's Youth Asia recently to take a group of 12 youth, 13 to 15 years old, from Nepal to the Washington, D.C. area to work on their basketball skills and youth development skills. And we also do professional exchanges. And we take up-and-coming Nepali leaders from all sectors of society, political, economic, culture, community, to the United States, and they meet with their professional counterparts. So basically, my job is to promote mutual understanding between the people of Nepal and the people of the United States. Today's Youth Asia asked me to come here to speak on cultural diversity in the United States. And as you know, that's a huge topic. And if we brought in 5 different diplomats from the U.S. Embassy to speak on this topic, you would get 5 very different speeches. Mostly because we have different upbringings, we come from different states, we have different experiences that shaped how we view such a big topic as cultural diversity. Today, the U.S. population is roughly 300 million people. And the demography of the U.S. has changed drastically since the first European settlers arrived in the 1600s on the East Coast and started putting up their settlements. Other factors that have really changed the demography of the United States are religions, races, education, and the role of women and minorities. As immigrants came to the United States, not just white European settlers who were religious minorities, but we also had Africans who came to the United States as slaves from all over parts of Africa. They went to Europe, they went to Brazil, and then they also went to the United States. And so those slaves became free citizens, in the 1860s after the Civil War. But it's been a progressive movement to include them in the mainstream U.S. society. It's been a real challenge. We've also had European immigrants. For example, I'll give you a little story later about my family, but throughout the 1800s, there were people who came from all over Europe, such as Ireland and Poland and Germany, all over from Europe, and they helped fuel a lot of the industrialization that happened in the big cities like Chicago. They actually have more Polish people in Chicago than they do in Poland. Isn't that interesting? Most recently, immigrants in the United States continue to be Asians and Latinos, and all of these different ethnic groups have contributed drastically to the cultural diversity of our nation, and the U.S. is seen as a melting pot. Have you heard of that expression before? What's a melting pot? Yes.
America is called melting pot because people from various parts of the world come to America and they bring their culture and blend with the American lifestyle, and because of this blending a new culture is formed which we term as American culture, and this is why America is called melting pot.
Exactly. And so especially the children of immigrants become very culturally diverse in ways that their parents never became. And so for some this is a blessing, and for some this is a curse. But I think for most Americans this has really, really strengthened our country because we have so many different races and religions. People contribute so many strengths and gifts to our country. Because we are a nation of immigrants, and that's really the principle, the founding ideas behind our country. We have Muslims, we have Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Europeans, Asians, Latinos, Africans, and so especially when you go to big cities, you'll see the storefronts in many, many different languages, not just in English or Spanish. When I go back to the concept of cultural diversity, I want to talk a little bit about my family's experience, and this is really like when you meet people in the United States or people from other countries, for me it's always interesting, where are you from? Where are your parents from? And so if you ask me where I'm from, I will say, well, I most recently lived in Seattle, but I went to school in Boise, Idaho, but I was born and raised in Wisconsin. And I know that's very similar for people in Nepal as well. People are moving and living with parents, and then they might come to the city to go to school, and then you get a job elsewhere. So both of our societies are in flux. So my maternal grandparents, my mother's father and mother, were both born in the United States. They were born in Wisconsin, which is in the central part of the United States. They were the son and daughter of immigrants from Poland. And so they just had minimal exposure, unfortunately, to other races and cultures, just those they read about or eventually watched on TV when they could afford TVs. And so my mother, as she was raised, she was a product of this environment. She was not encouraged to go to school. She was encouraged to get married quickly. She was encouraged to continue working at the brick factory because she, in a factory in Milwaukee, made more money than my grandfather on the farm. She didn't have any confidence. She knew she wanted to go to school, but she had no mentors. So back then, when you applied for what you wanted to study, she had no idea. So she looked on the paper of the girl next to her, and she wrote down, and that was her career. So she became a German and English teacher. I think we're all products of our environment, and so it's interesting to think back about where that all comes from. And I realize that in many societies this is not possible. I would argue that historically, based on this melting pot and based on all the values that all the immigrants and ethnic groups in the U.S. have contributed, is that people really have one of our, I would say,